Hi, my name is Barbara McBride Smith, and it's my privilege to introduce these next two guys to you. Now, these fellas, David Holt and Josh Goforth, are musical geniuses, but they also happen to tell glorious stories. Both David and Josh are from the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. Well, that's not exactly true. Josh is a native of the North Carolina Appalachian Mountains, but David Holt is originally from Texas. But North Carolina has adopted him. Today they're going to share with you some stories, some music, and the wonderful thing is that this event was filmed at David's home in Asheville, North Carolina. So welcome home, everybody. Welcome to David's home. And Josh and David, let her roll.
Hi folks, great to be here with you. We're in my living room here in Asheville, North Carolina. Josh, let's start off with a song from our friend and mentor, Doc Watson.
All right.
This is one that Doc recorded early on. You don't hear it very many times, but it's a song we need today, I think, called The Cloud's Gonna Roll Away. Now trouble's gonna find you no matter what you do. So never trouble till trouble troubles you. Oh, the cloud's gonna roll away, the cloud's gonna roll away. I don't care how hard it rains, the cloud's gonna roll away.
Yeah, man.
Now the lightning bug, he never knows just what he's going to find. So he keeps on flying round and round with his little light on behind. Oh, the cloud's gonna roll away, the cloud's gonna roll away. I don't care how hard it rains, the cloud's gonna roll away. Play it, John. Now the hen, she first came from the egg came from the hen. I've been wondering all my days just how it's gonna end. Oh, the cloud's gonna roll away, the cloud's gonna roll away. I don't care how hard it rains, the cloud's gonna roll away. Oh, the cloud's gonna roll away, the cloud's gonna roll away. I don't care how hard it rains, the cloud's gonna roll away. That's a good one. So this next tune is from a fellow that used to live up in Sodom, North Carolina, that I learned a lot of my early music from, Bard Ray. And Bard was quite a character. He said, I only know two chords. One's the A chord and one ain't. Here's what the ain't chord sounded like. You like to get that bluesy note in there.
That's funky.
Yeah, tell us about this tune.
We'll do one that actually I heard Bard play called The Cotton-Eyed Joe. Now, I never got to meet Bard, but I had several records of his. And actually, his daughter was my 5th grade teacher, and she told us a lot of great stories about Bard. And this is one of the tunes I heard him play called The Cotton-Eyed Joe. Yeah, are you ready?
Don't you remember and don't you know that I met a man called a Cotton
Cotton Eye Joe, that's a good one. Or as they say around here, that's a good one.
Good one.
So I want to show you an instrument I found up in that little community of Sodom. Now, Josh, you grew up in Lonesome Mountain, which is right down the road from Sodom, right?
We call it the gateway to Sodom.
Greater Metro Sodom.
Greater Metro.
So I was very interested in finding old banjo players when I first came to the Southern Mountains in the late 60s. And I found people playing all sorts of unusual things, like this thing right here. It's called a mouth bow. And basically it's just a stick with a string on it. Clearly the oldest stringed instrument in the world and played in almost every country. Let me show you how it works. You put your mouth up to the wood, you don't put it in your mouth, and you pick the string. And if you move your mouth around, you get another note, sort of. But it gives a nice rhythm, and it. You tell them what you're going to play, then I'll tell them about the song.
Since we have the mouth bow, I figured it'd be neat to play another instrument found in the mountains. And this is an instrument that David collected over in Burnsville, North Carolina. Now, he told me that the only instrument they were playing at this dance he went to was this instrument right here.
Yeah.
All it is just a stick with bottle caps nailed to it, and they call it a stump fiddle. And it sounds like this.
So we're going way back, call old-time music for sure. So this is a song about the drovers. Now these were people who drove cattle and pigs and wild turkeys all the way from East Tennessee, Asheville, all the way down to Charleston, South Carolina in the early 1800s. That was a long ride, mostly on foot actually. So here's a song I wrote called The Drovers. Well, it takes 3 months on the drover's road to get these hogs to market. Oh, I'll come back with a wagon load and a few coins in my pocket. Trading hogs for china dishes, coffee guns and salted fishes. I may never know what rich is. All I do is barter. Now drover's work is never done. He's going or he's coming. I'll drive these hogs to Charleston, 10,000 hooves a humming. Trading hogs for china dishes, coffee guns and salted fishes. I may never know what rich is. All I do is barter. Well, we turn our corn into sour mash. From sour mash to whiskey, it'll keep them warm on a winter's night and make their loving frisky. Trading hogs for china dishes, coffee guns and salted fishes. I may never know what rich is. All I do is barter. So it's fare thee well, my own true love. Fare thee well, my darling. I'm leaving here to Charleston. I'm leaving here this morning. Trading hogs for china dishes, coffee guns and salted fishes. I may never know what rich is. All I do is barter. Never know what's going to happen with that instrument.
Some modern mouth bow playing.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, it's the progressive school of.
Well, let's actually take you back to Madison County and kind of give you something that also sounds kind of ancient. Of course, I grew up in what we call a blended family because my mom and dad grew up on different creek lines. Now, my dad's family, of course, were the banjo players and the storytellers and the fiddle players, but my mom's family did the religious music. Now, I went to a Baptist church when I was a kid, and we didn't have a piano, as my sister called it, or anything, so we would sing a cappella. And there was a guy who would come up front. His name was Wiley Massey, and Wiley was a great singer. Now, you have to understand, this was an old-timey church, but I like to think of it as kind of a modern church because for my first communion to represent the body of Christ, they used Necco candy wafers. That's true. To this day, anytime somebody says the word communion, I think root beer, because that's the flavor we ended up with over in the Amen corner by the time it made it all the way around the church. But Wiley was a great singer, and he would come up front, and he had this really shiny dress boot. And the floor of the church was wooden, and he would stomp his foot on that wooden floor. And you could feel the vibration of that stomping just up through the floorboards. And he would start the song, and that rhythm really made you want to sing. So I'd like to do a song that I learned from Wiley Massey and also from the singing of Dillard Chandler, one of the great ballad singers from over in Sodom. And this is one called Jesus Said Go. Let me show you how he got it started out. He'd started like this. When I was a sinner, well, the people would say, if you want to be converted, you better pray. Trust in them who's found the Lord, for he has promised a sure reward. Jesus said, go, and I'll go with you. Preach the gospel, and I'll preach with you. Lord, if I go, tell me what to say, for they won't believe on me. Well, I started out on my way to pray, and I'll tell you what the Spirit did say. Come unto me, for I am the way, and I intended to try to pray. Jesus said, go, and I'll go with you. Preach the gospel, and I'll preach with you. Lord, if I go, tell me what to say, for they won't believe on me. Well, my hands was tied and my feet were bound. The elements opened and the Lord come down. The voice I heard, it sounded though sweet, that the love run out at the sole of my feet. Jesus said, go, and I'll go with you. Preach the gospel, and I'll preach with you. Lord, if I go, tell me what to say, for they won't believe on me. Now, by the end of this song, everybody in that church was patting their laps. And if you're at home just sitting there, you can pat your lap along with us. Here's what it sounded like. Well, its doubts may rise, trouble may roll, but God will save your sin-sick soul. Jesus said, go, and I'll go with you. Preach the gospel, and I'll preach with you. Lord, if I go, tell me what to say, for they won't believe on me. Jesus said, go, and I'll go with you. Preach the gospel, and I'll preach with you. Lord, if I go, tell me what to say, for they won't believe on me.
Nice, Josh. That's a good one. So, one of the groups I played with when I first came to Asheville was a group called the Luke Smathers String Band. Now, these were mountain boys back in the 1920s, and they learned, all the old mountain tunes, Mississippi Sawyer, Soldier's Joy, all that stuff. But they began to hear the radio. It came into their part of the mountains in Canton, North Carolina, and they heard songs like Alabama Jubilee and all kind of swing tunes, just every kind of swing tune you can imagine.
Take Me to the Ice House Lizzie.
There's one, yeah. Oh, they were full
Sweet
of
Georgia
unusual
Brown,
tunes.
yeah.
Yeah, Sweet Georgia Brown, thank you. And so they would learn to play those songs, but sort of in a cross between a mountain style and a swing style. And we call it mountain swing music. I played with these guys for 8 years. And then, Josh, you got to meet Luke and play with him some too, didn't you?
I did. Actually, the first record I ever owned was the Luke Smathers String Band, and David was on the record, so that was pretty cool. And Luke was such a kind person, and got to go over because they would have a practice, of course, every Sunday in his kitchen. And so I got to go over and play some of these swing tunes with Luke Smathers and the wonderful band.
Josh, the band was together from 1929 till the mid-'80s when Luke passed away. And they didn't care about doing a gig. They just liked to practice. And they'd practiced every Sunday night since 1929. It was incredible. So they were real good.
And they had a lot of fun doing it.
Oh, yeah, they did.
I think this was probably one of the ones we played at one of my sessions over at Luke's. And it's on that record that David Holt's on. It's called Darkness on the Delta. Here's how it goes. When it's darkness on the delta, that's the time my heart is light. When it's darkness on the delta, let me linger in the shelter of the night. There's fields of cotton there all around me. The folks are singing sweet and low. Lord, it's lucky that she found me where the muddy Mississippi waters flow. Now lounging on the levee, listening to the nightingale. Way up above, laughter on the levee. No one's heart is heavy, 'cause all God's children got someone to love. When it's darkness on the delta, that's the time my heart is light. When it's darkness on the delta, let me linger in the shelter of the night. Well, it's lounging on the levee and listening to the nightingale. Way up above, oh, it's laughter on the levee. And no one's heart is heavy, 'cause all God's children got someone to love. When it's darkness on the delta, that's the time my heart is light. When it's darkness on the delta, let me linger in the shelter of the night.
Beautiful. I love that song.
Yeah.
Why don't you pick them a flat picking tune?
Oh yeah, let's do that. That would be fun. You know, once I got that record of Luke, you know, I was just fascinated with it, and I would look at that photo over and over, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to play with him so bad. And then I just started playing guitar, and I remember I went to my, I think I was probably 11 years old, something like that. And so maybe when I turned 12, I was at the middle school in Madison County, and my teacher said, you know, we got this guy that's going to come play music for us, and I'd love to get you up and play a song with him. And I was like, oh, I can do that. And who shows up but the same guy that's on the record that I had, David Holt, and the hat looked just a lot. I mean, it was just wonderful. And I got to get on stage with David and play several songs with him.
Yeah, you did great.
And he called me back in the year 2000 to join a band he was taking to Europe, and we started playing as a duet, and we've been performing together ever since.
Since 2000,
Since 2000, so 20.
Great.
Yeah, so let's play a flat picking tune for you.
From Doc, maybe something from...
Yeah, from Doc Watson. Doc was a wonderful flat picking guitarist, and I also had a record of Doc, and I'll never forget, it was a live album, and before someone would take a solo, Doc would say, "Pick it, son." And I wanted to hear that so bad when I was a kid that I would play rhythm guitar. And right before I would take my solo, I'd go, "Pick it, son," and then I'd take my break. And so when I finally got to meet David, and of course several years later start playing music with David, he was playing with Doc Watson at the time.
Yeah.
And he invited me up on stage to play with Doc. And so I got to play tunes like this one right here, and I got to hear the words, "Pick it, son, so I can die a happy man." So let's do this song we probably did that day. This is called The Black Mountain Rag, one of Doc's most famous tunes. Here's how he would do it.
killing it. That's great picking.
Oh, that was fun.
Josh, let's tell them a story.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a story from Cherokee Indians that live around this part of western North Carolina. It happened about 1,000 years ago. There was a Cherokee hunter going through the Blue Ridge Mountains. He had a big buck deer in his sights. He got close enough where he could get a good clean shot. He took out his straightest arrow and he shot at that big buck. And it hit him right in the side. Well, the deer took off. This wasn't surprising to the young man. This is what he expected to happen. The deer would run for a while and then collapse. He ran behind that deer for hours. The deer got so far back in the Blue Ridge Mountains that the young man didn't know where he was. He'd never been there before, but he was going to get this buck. He knew it was going to go down. And finally, the deer came to the edge of a big grassy meadow, and he stopped on the edge of the meadow and began to run across it, and this warrior realized he had a perfect shot. He took his bow and his arrow and he shot, and when he did, the deer just disappeared. Well, he began to think, how could that have happened? And then he remembered that ever since he was a boy, he had heard the story about the magic lake of the animals, where the animals would go if they were hurt or wounded, they would jump in the water and they would swim around until they were completely healed. Well, the man thought, maybe this is where it is. And so he sat down on the ground and he began to pray and fast all through that night, until finally he opened his eyes when the sun finally hit his face. And when he opened his eyes, instead of sitting on the edge of a big grassy meadow, he was now on the shore of a beautiful lake that stretched as far as he could see. There were all sorts of birds flying overhead, leaves on the trees, beautiful animals along the shore, rabbit, deer, squirrel, mountain lions, all living peacefully together. Every once in a while, there would be a hurt or wounded animal come running out of the woods and jump in the water and roll around and get out completely healed. Well, the man sat there fascinated watching this the whole day until he thought that the vision might disappear, and as the sun began to go down, it did begin to disappear. Well, he jumped up, and before it got dark, he built himself a tower taller than his head out of rocks so that he could find this place again if he wanted to. And he went back to the village and told the Cherokee what happened. Everyone wanted to go. Everyone wanted to see the magic lake. They had all heard of it their whole lives. He said, it's not a place for humans. It wouldn't be good for me to take you. And he wouldn't take anyone there. That winter was the coldest, most terrible winter the Cherokee had ever seen. There was no food. The snow was waist deep. Finally, the chief of the Cherokee came to this young man. He said, you're going to have to go back to the magic lake and bring us some food. The young hunter said, you want me to go back and kill something there? That would not be right. The chief said, if you do not, my family will die, your family will die, we'll all die. You must go. The young man knew he had to. So the next day he got up early. He got his blanket, a big warm blanket, his bow, his arrow, 3 arrows, and he made his way through the waist-deep snow. Took him almost all day to get back to it. He finally found that little tower sticking out of the snow about that much. He put his blanket down and he began to pray and fast all through that freezing cold night, asking that if this was the real magic lake, that he would be able to see it again. He didn't stop praying until the sun hit his face. And then he opened his eyes. And instead of sitting on the edge of a snow-covered meadow, it was now a beautiful crystal clear lake. No snow there at all sorts of leaves on the trees, every kind of bird flying overhead, animals along the shore, 3 big bear in the water. He took his sharpest, straightest arrow and pointed it at the biggest bear and shot him and hit him right in the heart. The bear turned around and saw a man at the shore and let out a tremendous roar. And then somehow in the vision, the man could understand what the bear said. The bear said, you have broken the promise here, and now you must die. And the man fell, the bear fell back in the water. And the water began to wash over the bear and begin to dissolve that arrow that was stuck in his heart. The bear rolled around until he was completely healed. He stood up and he fell on that man and almost tore him to pieces. When at last the man came to, he realized he was barely alive. He was face down in the mud. He could see his hand was totally torn and tattered. The skin was gone from his hand. He could see it was gone from his arm. He knew it was gone from his back. He could hardly move. He knew he wouldn't live long. But with what little bit of strength he had left in that hand, he dropped it in that lake. And that water began to wash over that hand. And that water began to heal that hand until the skin had grown back. And then with the strength in that hand, he pulled his arm and dropped it in the water. And the lake washed over his arm until his arm was completely healed. And then with the strength in that arm, he raised up on his elbow and he rolled and he rolled and he rolled until he was completely whole. He stood up. He was so tired. He started to walk towards the shore and he just fell face down in the mud. When he came to, he realized he was cold and stiff. And he lifted up his head and he saw he was face down in the snow. He looked off to the side, and for as far as he could see, there was a snow-covered meadow. He stood up to look for animal prints, but there were none. There was just his blanket, his bow, and 2 arrows. He picked them up and he went back to the village and told everyone what had happened. And from that day to this, no human being has ever seen the magic lake again. But the Cherokee will tell you, it's out there, unseen by us, the magic lake of the animals. Nice. I love that story. Beautiful. Let's shift gears here and talk about Etta Baker. Etta Baker was one of the great guitarists that lived around Western North Carolina, a friend of mine for 40 years. I would take her around to the schools and we would do concerts all around the state. And one time we were driving along, she looked up at me and she said, "David, do you like to drive fast?" Now here she is, like 86 years old. I said, "No, Etta, I don't really care about driving fast." She said, "Oh, I dearly love to drive fast." She said, "I used to have a 1968 GTO, had 440 horsepower, 4 on the floor, dual barrel carbs, positive traction rear end, and Tiger Paw radios." She said that thing would do 180 miles an hour. That's what it said on the speedometer. I said, "Etta Baker, you mean to tell me that you drove your car 180 miles an hour up and down I-40? Because where else would you do it?" She said, "Oh, no, I made a deal with the Lord. I promised him that if he would never give me a ticket, I'd never go a mile over 150. She still had that car, too.
Like to have been in the car once she was driving 150. Should have been something else.
She was just such a quiet, sweet lady. You wouldn't expect that, you know? So let's do one of her songs. Etta was known for a style of guitar playing called Piedmont blues, where she was picking with her finger, and you've got picks on there. And
I do, and she would use her thumb, of course, on the bass notes.
Yeah.
Kind of get a little rhythm going in you. And do the melody notes with the other fingers. And
right, so it's almost like a whole band in one hand.
Absolutely.
You know, she started playing when she was 3 and practiced an hour a day for 90 years.
Makes me feel terrible.
She was a very clean player. It paid off for her. So let's do this Railroad Bill. This is Railroad Bill was a real outlaw. Morris Slater lived in Alabama, and they say he was so tricky that he could turn himself into a cat and get away. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, here's this old folk song, and you're welcome to sing along with us. Now Railroad Bill, so mean and so bad, took a swing at his mama, took a shot at his dad, then he ride. Railroad Bill, his cigar with a $10 bill, and then he ride. Well, now call the doctor, and the doctor came. Said, you're not sick, Bill, you're just insane. And then he ride. Here we go, sing it with us. Railroad Bill, lights his cigar with a $10 bill, and then he ride. Play it, Josh. Now Railroad Bill turn into a cat. All you'd find is his old gray Stetson hat. Then he ride. Railroad Bill, lights his cigar with a $10 bill. Then he ride. Play that little lick by Etta. Yeah. Let's sing it one more time.
All right.
Railroad Bill, lights his cigar with a $10 bill, and then he ride. I love that song.
Great.
Let's do a song by Bascom Lunsford. Some of you may not know the name Bascom Lunsford, but he was the man that started the first folk festival in America, right here in Asheville, North Carolina, the Mountain Dance and Folk Festival. And he started that in 1928, but long before that, he was out collecting old folk songs through the mountains. Now notice that he's wearing a tuxedo. He was not one of these guys that wanted mountain musicians to be cornball. He wanted them to be respected. And so he always performed in a tuxedo, which I think is kind of great. He was a good banjo player, good singer, and a great song collector. In 1904, he collected the song from a young woman, a 15-year-old woman in Graham County, North Carolina, named Leela Ammons. And this is the only place he ever found the song. The only place I've ever heard it either is from Bascom. Have you?
It is the only place that I've heard this song. I think maybe Woody Guthrie might have heard it from Bascom, maybe, or Arlo Guthrie.
Probably, because he did record it.
He did record it, yeah.
So this is for anybody who's had to leave a place they dearly loved. Oh, it's sad to be parted from those that we love. Strange faces we see every day. Each heartstring of mine is broken in time when I think of those dear ones at home. Goodbye, dear old Stepstone, goodbye to my home. God bless those I leave with a sigh. I'll cherish fond memories when I am far away, to roam o'er this wide world alone. I stood on my doorstep at evening and mourned. The wind whistled by with a moan. Fields will be whitening and I will be gone, to roam o'er this wide world alone. Goodbye, dear old Stepstone, goodbye to my home. God bless those I leave with a sigh. I'll cherish fond memories when I am far away, to roam o'er this wide world alone. Well, I stood on my doorstep when school time was o'er. How I wished for the time to go by, Oh, now it has gone, and I stand here alone to bid this old Stepstone goodbye. Goodbye, dear old Stepstone, goodbye to my home. God bless those I leave with a sigh. I'll cherish fond memories when I am far away to roam o'er this wide world alone. You know, there's an apocryphal story about Bascom. He would go around selling fruit trees in the mountains. He was actually a lawyer by trade, but it didn't work so well to come up to a house in the mountains and say, I'm a lawyer, I'm looking for old songs. So he sold fruit trees, and that's how he met Leela Ammons. And there's a story about him. He can't find a place to stay. He's traveling around Madison County. There's no motels or any hotels in those days. And so he just goes up to a house and knocks on the door. And an old man comes to the door and he said, Sir, I don't need to sell you anything. I'm out here selling fruit trees, but I just need a place to spend the night. It's raining, and if you could put me up, that would be great. Well, in those days, people weren't afraid of each other. And the old man said, come on in, son. And they sat down by the fire and they talked about the crops and the trees and songs, and he collected a few songs from him. And finally, there was nothing to talk about. And after a while, Bascom said, Sir, do you ever make a bet? The old man said, yeah, I'll make a wager occasionally. He said, well, let's play a little game. You ask me a question, and if I can't answer it, I give you $1. And I'll ask you a question, and if you can't answer it, since I've been to college and all that, I'm a lawyer, you just have to pay me 50 cents. The old man said, well, that sounds good. Bascom said, you go first. The old man said, what has 5,000 wings, flies, but can't swim? Bascom said, 5,000 wings, flies, but can't swim? I don't know. Here's your $1. What is it? Darned if I know, said the old man. Here's your 50 cents. I love that.
Got him.
Shall we do a little washboard?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Let me show the people the picture of how I got into the washboard. This is Susie Brunson. She was the oldest person in the world when I took this picture. She was 122, living with her youngest of 12 children, the only one still living, and she was 89. She loved the banjo. She loved me to come down and play the banjo for her. But the thing she loved the most was wanting me to learn to play the washboard. She said that was the only instrument they had in the black community. I said, well, you know, I'd be happy to learn to play it because I've always seen people play it, but I'd love to learn the way you did. You guys used to play it back in the, she was born in 1870. So she said she'd show me, and if you look on my website, you can see a picture of her teaching me the rhythms. Let me get a harmonica here. She said, get yourself some thimbles, just sewing thimbles, put them on your fingers, and you just, don't scrub it very much, she said. Just tap it lightly. Put a little wood block at the bottom. And that's the way you play the washboard. Now, after Susie passed away, I thought that was fascinating to find the oldest person in the world. And the next oldest person in the world was Mary Thompson after Susie passed away. She was 120. And I asked these people, what was your favorite song? Well, her favorite song was a song called Greasy Greens. I'd never heard of it. Had you ever heard Greasy Greens before I played it?
Never.
No, I hadn't either. And I said, well, I'll try to learn it for you and come back and play it for you. So I asked my friend George Hicks, who lived down in Tarboro, North Carolina, and he said, yeah, I think I know it good enough I can show it to you so you can go back and play it for her. So Josh and I are going to play a little bit of Greasy Greens, Mary Thompson's favorite song. By the way, she said she lived that long by just minding her own business.
Good advice.
Now way down south where I was born, didn't raise nothing but cotton and corn. Green tomatoes and black-eyed peas, oh good Lord, them greasy greens. That's what I want now. Hey, pretty mama, you just got 'em done. Soft and needy, good and greasy. How I love those greasy greens. Crazy about my greasy greens. Now I'm a man from New Orleans. Crazy about my greasy greens. If I don't get 'em 3 times a day, well, I'll get mad and I'll walk away. That's what I want. Hey, pretty mama, you just got 'em done. Soft and needy, good and greasy. How I love those greasy greens. Crazy about my greasy greens. And that's what I want now. Hey, pretty mama, you just got 'em done. Soft and needy, good and greasy. How I love those greasy greens. Crazy about my greasy greens. Crazy about my greasy greens. Crazy about my greasy greens.
That was good and greasy, I think.
That was definitely greasy. Greasy listening, I like to say.
That's right.
Josh, tell me about the ballads. You grew up, you know, Sodom, Laurel, and Lonesome Mountain, all that area of Madison County, North Carolina, was known for ballad singing, as you well know, because you grew up in it. I got some pictures of some of the old singers if you want to tell them about them.
Yeah, ballad singing is a wonderful tradition where I grew up there in Madison County. And there's such an ancient sound to these ballads. Now, these ballads are hundreds of years old, and they've been passed down through the generations from, as my papa would say, across the big pond. Mm-hmm. And these folks came with their stories and their fiddles, but also these ballads. Now, a ballad is a story song, and the subjects vary. It can be about love or war, historical events, betrayal, and a whole lot of murder thrown in as well.
Always murder.
And in that little community of Sodom were some of the finest ballad singers singing in some of the most traditional ways of these ballads that had not survived in England, but had survived in these mountains in western North Carolina. Like this person right here, Dellie Norton. Dellie was a wonderful ballad singer and had this archaic way, this style of singing that you'll hear some once I start singing this ballad. And she was one of David's main influences, I know for certain. Yeah. And then, now these ballads are sung in a certain style that is powerful. You'd sit on somebody's porch like this fella right here, Kaz Wallen. Now, Kaz was a powerful singer, and his voice would echo just across all those mountains. And David was telling me that Kaz said to practice his singing, he would sing up into a holler. And if he could hear his voice echoing back, he knew he was singing with the right amount of intensity.
When he was powerful, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely powerful. You could just feel it, just vibrating everything, your whole body. And so I'd like to sing one of those traditional ballads from Madison County, and it's one you might be familiar with because it is one of the famous ballads. And I'll sing it in that old style, probably pretty different than you've ever heard. This is called Barbara Allen. In Scarlet Town, where I was born, there lived a fair maid dwelling, made every youth cry well a day, and her name was Barbary Allen. 'Twas in the merry month of May, when all the flowers were a-blooming, sweet William on his deathbed lay. for the want of Barbary Allen. He called his servant to his side, said, go and quickly find her. He said, go unto the town, my friend, find the one named Barbary Allen. Well, he searched high and he searched low. When in the town he found her, he said, fly with me, my pretty fair miss, if your name be Barbary Allen. So slow lie, she got up, and slow lie she drew nigh him, and all she said at his bedside was, young man, I think you're a-dying. Don't you recall last Saturday night when we's all at the tavern, you gave a toast to the ladies all, but you slighted Barbary Allen. Yes, I recall last Saturday night when we's all at the tavern, I gave a toast to the ladies all, but I gave my heart to Barbary Allen. Oh, take it back, I'll have it not, for you have treated me so sorely. Next Saturday night at the tavern, my friend, I'll treat you just as poorly. So he turned his head unto the wall, and with a breath in the sighing, that night sweet William drew his last, for the want of Barbary Allen. Well, she was riding all through the town when she heard the death bells a-tolling, and with every ring they seemed to say, hard-hearted Barbary Allen. Go, mother, oh mother, please make my bed. Go make it long and narrow. Last night sweet William died for me. The same I'll do for him tomorrow. So the very next morn they found her there. It's as if she was a-sleeping, and in her hand she held a note. Said, Mother, I'm done with my grieving. They buried sweet William in the old churchyard, and Barbary they laid nigh him, and out in his grave grew a blood-red rose, and out in hers grew a briar. Well, they grew and grew to the churchyard gate, till they could grow no higher, and they wrapped themselves in a true lover's knot, with a rose wrapped round the briar.
Ooh, man, that's powerful. I love that. Well, let's go from the beautiful to the ridiculous.
Which is very mountain of us.
Yeah,
Sing a
that's
ballad
right.
or a silly song like this.
This is Grandpa Jones. He was a good pal of mine and really helped me a lot in my career, and played on hee-haw. I played on hee-haw with him many times, and this is a song that he recorded back in 1946. He had a hit with an old tune called Here Rattler Here, and then he was looking for another song, and he came across this one written by Bascom Lunsford and some other folks, and he said they made the record, and it took off like a one-eyed cat in a dog pound.
Paints a picture.
Yeah, really. So you people probably know this song and sing along with us. It's an old song called A Good Old Mountain Dew. Red Eye?
Yeah.
There's an old hollow tree down the road just a piece where you lay down $1 or two. Well, you go round the bend when you come back again. It's good old Mountain Dew. Hey, they call it that good old Mountain Dew. And them that refuse it are few. I'll hush up my mug if you fill up my jug with that good old Mountain Dew.
Well, my Uncle Mort, he is sawed off and short. He measures about 4'2".
He was short.
But he thinks he's a giant when they give him a pint of that good old Mountain Dew. Here we go. Hey!
They call it that good old Mountain Dew. Them that refuse it are few. I'll hush up my mug if you fill up my jug with that good old Mountain Dew. Yeah. Well, my Auntie June's got a brand new perfume and it gives off one awful PU. She had it analyzed and much to her surprise was good old Mountain Dew. They call it that good old Mountain Dew. Them that refuse it are few. I'll hush up my mug if you fill up my jug with that good old Mountain Dew.
Well, my Uncle Bill, he runs a still on the hill. Lord, he runs off a gallon or two. And the birds in the sky get so drunk they can't fly on that good old Mountain Dew.
Hey, they call it that good old Mountain Dew. And them that refuse it are few. I'll hush up my mug if you fill up my jug with that good old Mountain Dew.
I'll hush up.
I'll hush up my mug if you fill up my jug with that good old Mountain Dew.
Hey!
What a crazy song. Well, we definitely wanted to tell you some stories. And this is one of the quintessential mountain scary stories. Josh, can you hand me that steel guitar back there?
Yeah. Getting serious now.
Once a long time ago in the big woods of Tennessee, there lived an old man in a log cabin all by himself. Just a small cabin, just one room. Didn't have much in there, just a table, a single chair, and a fireplace, no stove. He did all his cooking on that big old open fire. And every day the old man would go out in the woods and try to catch something to eat at night. Rabbit, deer, fish, something like that. But if he couldn't catch anything, he'd still have to eat. So he fixed himself a big old pot of beans. Now that old man was sitting there cooking a pot of beans and listening to the wind howl through the trees outside. He was just lost in his thoughts, watching that fire burn down and those beans begin to boil, just about to nod off to sleep, when he looked down and he saw some kind of a creature start to stick its head up through a hole in the floorboards of the house. Well, it was a creature like he'd never seen before. That thing was as big as a dog, but it was no dog because it had fiery red eyes and long, sharp, pointy teeth. And when it came in the room, he could see it had a tail, like a giant green rat's tail. Now he realized he should have fixed that hole in the floor early last summer, but it was too late now. That thing was in the cabin. He leaned over, and in the darkness, he picked up the axe. When that thing came in the room, he chopped at it. It let out an awful yell and went running back out between the floorboards of the house. Now that old man had lived in those woods his whole life, and he had never seen a creature like that before. But there its old tail was, still sitting on the floor, flopping around. Well, he reached down and he picked it up, and it was a big old long green thing, and it didn't have any hair on it, and it had a lot of meat on it, and well, he didn't have any meat for those beans, so he just dropped that tail into those beans, cooked it on down, and then like a fool, he ate it. It tasted good going down though, but when he finished, he realized, he's getting a horrible stomachache. So he crawled on over the bed, and he pulled the covers up around his head, and he was just about to go to sleep when he heard a little scratching sound up the side of the house. He sat up in his bed and he said, "Now go on, get out of here." But all he heard was, "Taily bone, taily bone, I want my taily bone." Well, the old man figured somebody was out there trying to play a trick on him. He said, "Now go on, get out of here, whoever you are." But all he heard was, "Taily bone, taily bone, I want my taily bone." Well, the old man wasn't scared. He just called his dogs who lived up under the house. He said, "Ano, Uno, come to Calico. Get rid of that thing." And those dogs ran out from under the house, and they chased that thing way back down to the woods. The old man went to the door and he listened, and way down in the woods he could hear those dogs barking. Well, he went back in the house. He knew they were mean dogs. They'd get rid of that thing. He closed the door, didn't even bother to bar it shut. Crawled into bed, went right to sleep. He hadn't been asleep long though, when he heard a little scratching above the door. Yeah, something was trying to come in through the door. He said, "Now looky here, I told you to get out of here. Go on, yeah." But all he heard was, "Taily bone, taily bone, I want my taily bone." Well, the old man was mad this time when he called his dogs. He said, "Ano, Uno, get rid of that thing." And those dogs almost tore down the fence getting at that thing this time. The old man went to the door. He could hear those dogs barking. He turned around feeling safe, going back in the house when he heard, then it was completely quiet. He couldn't hear anything. Well, that kind of made him nervous. He closed that door, he barred it shut. He crawled into bed, he pulled the covers up around his head. He tossed and turned for hours, but he finally went to sleep. It must have been after midnight when he was awakened by what sounded like the wind outside. He sat up in his bed, and way down in the woods he could hear, "Taily bone, taily bone, I get my taily bone." The old man was just a little scared. This time he called his dogs. He said, "Ano, Uno, come to Calico." But all he heard was the sound of that wind. He called him again, "Ano, Uno, come to Calico." But that thing had taken those dogs down in the woods and lost them. That old man jumped out of bed. He went running around that cabin, picked up the axe, jumping at every little creaking sound he heard. And there were a lot of them in an old cabin like that. Well, he went over to the windows and he closed all the shutters and barred them tight. He built up a big fire in the fireplace so nothing could come down the chimney after him. And then he remembered that hole in the floor, and he put a big rock over that hole so nothing could come up through the floor. But he wasn't about to go to sleep. He just sat up all night long, waiting for that thing to come back. Finally, he thought surely the sun would be up and he would be safe if the sun was up. He went over to the window to check. He put down the axe. He opened up that wooden shutter and looked out. And the sun was up. It looked so warm and good. He went over to the bed and he just fell back into the bed. And when his head hit the pillow, he heard, taily bone. He said, no, I ain't got your old taily bone. That thing said, you got my taily bone. And it jumped on that man, and some folks say, that thing got its taily bone. Now you can go down to the big woods of Tennessee this very day. You won't see the cabin anymore, it's gone. All that's left is an old chimney standing out in the field there. But sometimes, late at night, when the moon is full and the wind is howling through the trees, you can still hear it. It'll say, taily bone, taily bone, I got my taily bone. The taily bone. That's a good one.
Spooky, yeah.
Let's go back and pick one of Doc's tunes. Maybe the Deep River Blues, something great like that.
Oh yeah, that sounds fun.
Would you put that back over there?
Yeah.
So there's a verse in this song that says, my old gal's a good old gal. She walks like a waterfowl when I get those Deep River Blues. Doc was very thoughtful, and he always thought through every song he did and kind of had a picture of why it was, what the words meant. I said, Doc, what do you think the words mean? My old gal, she's a good old gal. She walks like a waterfowl. He said, well, you know, when a man gets kind of lonely or depressed and his woman realizes that and she walks by him and shakes her tail feathers, you know, just to make him feel better. I said, Doc, how would a blind man know about that?
Walk like a waterfowl.
Walk like a waterfowl. Well, this is one of the great Doc Watson tunes.
Probably one of his most famous.
I'd say.
The Deep River Blues. A 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let it rain and let it pour, let it rain a whole lot more, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Now let the wind drive right on, let the big waves sweep along, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Now my old gal, she's a good old gal, and she walks just like a waterfowl when I get them deep river blues. Now there ain't no one to cry for me, the fish all go out on a spree, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Sing it with me, David.
Yeah, man.
Let it rain, let it pour, let it rain a whole lot more, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Yeah. Let the wind drive right on, let the big waves sweep along, 'cause I got them deep river blues.
Pick it, son. Yeah.
Now I'm going back to Muscle Shoals. Time gets better there, I'm told, when I get them deep river blues. And I'm gonna take my old boat, now I'm gonna sail her, she still floats, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Let me pick it like Doc.
Oh, that's sweet.
To the chorus. Let it rain, let it pour, let it rain a whole lot more, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Let the wind drive right on, let the big waves sweep along, 'cause I got them deep river blues. Now I said I got them deep river blues.
Great. I want to tell you about Ray Hicks. He was the patriarch of mountain storytelling. I took this picture on his front porch one day, and you can see he was a 19th century man living in a 21st century world. All around him here are kindling, and around the whole house was kindling that he cut. He said, if you cut your own wood, it warms you twice, once when you cut it and once when you burn it. I said, that's good advice, Ray. I said, what's this little pentangle up here at the top of on the porch? He said, oh, that's to keep the witches away. I said, does it work? He said, well, most of the time. If you met Ray Hicks, or you even saw Ray Hicks, the first thing that would catch your attention was the fact that he was almost 7 feet tall, long and lanky. And the other thing was he had the most unusual mountain accent. He talked way back down in his throat like this and rolled the words around until he turned them loose into the world. He loved to talk. He had an accent that would just draw you in. He would tell me that once when he was little, if they got hurt, if they cut in their hand, they would stuff it full of dirt and that would heal it. He said, there's no dirt in the world that'll do that anymore. I said, why not, Ray? He said, jet fuel all over the world. Now, Ray Hicks was what we call an all-day talker. You'd come to his house, he wouldn't even say hi or anything like that. He would just go, and so, and start telling a story. Like you had walked in the middle of a story that had been going on for 2 weeks, and it probably was the case. That's exactly what it was. He said, and so Jack looked up, and there in the woods was a big old man coming through the woods with a big old head. He was knocking his head against rocks and trees and sticks and not even hurting a hair on his own head. Jack said, hello there, who are ye? He said, I'm Hardy Hardhead. Jack said, Hardy Hardhead, you must be. Get into my ship. And he'd go on like that all day long. You just have to sit there and listen, which was fun. But when it's time to go, you just had to stand up and say, Ray, gotta go. And so, and he kept going with the story. I'd walk through the front room of the house. He was walking behind me. And Ray says, Jackie boy, don't sell the cow. Your mama says we gotta sell the cow, but we ain't got no victuals, but we're gonna have to have something to eat. He said, if you do sell the cow, don't sell it for less than $50. By this time, I'm up in my car, got the window rolled down. I said, okay, Ray, $50. He said, don't sell it less than $50. I said, okay, Ray, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. I love you. I start to drive off, and he's just standing out there in the middle of the road, still telling the story. I once said, Ray, do you know any short stories? Do you know any short stories? He said, I learned this one when I was a boy. He said, if you took all the trees and put them into one tree, what a great tree that would be. If you took all the axes and put them into one axe, what a great axe that would be. And if you took all the men and put them into one man, what a great man that would be. If you took all the water and put it in one water, what a great ocean that would be. And if that great man picked up that great axe and chopped down that great tree and it fell in that great ocean, what a great splash it would be. That was the story. Well, Ray got prostate cancer, and I went up to see him. He was just staying in bed, and he said, well, David, you got to take the bad with the good at everything in life. The old folks used to say, bitter with the sweet, bitter with the sweet. He said, I've come up in my years, and now I'm going down the other side, bitter with the sweet. Well, at last, they put Ray in hospice, and he fell into a coma. And the hospice people, they know when somebody's about to die, and they called the family in. They said, you better come see him now. So everybody was gathered around the bed. And Tom Bennett, one of the hospice workers who had befriended Ray because they both played the harmonica, said to the family, do you mind if I play one song on the harmonica for Ray? Because I know he loved it. And they said, oh no, that would be great, please do. And he leaned right down to Ray's ear and he played a little of Amazing Grace. And Ray sat up in bed, his eyes wide open. He had been in a coma now, and his eyes wide open, his hands in the air. He said, "Now that's spirit." And he went on to live another 3 months, talking the whole time. He told the story about the time he was hitchhiking into Boone, and he was trying to get home, and nobody would give him a ride. And he felt in his pocket, and he said, "All I had was a crust of bread and a nickel." So he went into the hardware store down the road that he saw, and he bought a nickel's worth of tacks, and he put them in the road and went down the road about 100 feet. And the next car that came along ran over those tacks, had a flat tire. Ray ran out, helped the man change the tire. The man was so thankful. He took him all the way to his house in Beach Mountain, North Carolina. It was just a blessing to know Ray Hicks. Ray Hicks. Josh, let's close out here with a bones and spoons and fiddle piece.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
You know, the bones were my very first instrument. Here's a picture of my dad playing a pair of bones that were made during the Civil War by my great-great-grandfather, who was that guy right there. He left Alamance County, North Carolina in 1858 and moved to Texas, and that's how my family got there. And we're going to put together the bones and the spoons. And what are we going to play, Josh? What tunes do you want to do?
We'll do a couple of different tunes. Since the bones are an Irish instrument, let's do the Star of Munster, which is an Irish tune.
Love that tune.
And then we'll follow it up with a good kind of Southern Appalachian tune called Hell Broke Loose in Georgia.
All right.
So, here we go. Star of Munster.
All right. Thanks for being with us, folks. I'm David Holt. This is Josh Goforth. We hope to see you down the trail.